I'm Allie Roberts with Starting Line Products, and today we're going to show you how to install our power dome billet heads for the Polaris 850 Patriot engine. To begin, remove the hood and side panels from your sled. Then, disconnect the exhaust temperature sensors from the pipe and the silencer using a 17mm end wrench. Next, using a spring hook tool, remove the pipe and silencer. Be sure to retain all springs for reassembly. Remove the upper air intake assembly by removing the plastic darts using 2 small screwdrivers to release each dart's center, and a T40 torque socket and ratchet for the upper screws. Unplug the ECU from the wiring harness. Retain the screws and darts for reassembly. Remove the center air intake tube by cutting the plastic wire tie and pulling the center tube out of the side air intake tube. Using a Liquivac, begin to drain the engine coolant. With a ratchet and a 13mm socket, remove the DET sensor from the head and place to the side until it is time for reassembly. Using side cutters, carefully cut the wire tie holding the rubber cover on the water temperature sensor. Disconnect the water temperature sensor from the sensor itself. Then, using a ratchet and a 19mm socket, remove the water temperature sensor from the head and retain for reassembly. Next, remove the spark plug caps from the spark plugs, and using a spark plug wrench or a 13/16 inch socket and ratchet, remove the spark plugs, retain for reassembly. Using pliers, release the hose clamps securing the main coolant hose and the throttle body coolant hose, and remove both hoses from the head. Then, using a ratchet and a 13mm socket, remove the cap screws that are securing the cylinder head, then remove the head. At this time, you should inspect the factory cylinder O-rings, check them for any wear or tear, and replace them as needed. Wipe down the cylinder bore and bolt holes, removing any excess coolant. Once you have removed any excess coolant, replace the O-rings, making sure that they fit snugly in their original positions. Next, install the included spark plug O-rings onto the SLP head domes. Then, insert the domes into the SLP water cover. To make this process easier, you can install the spark plugs at this time finger tight. Next, install the SLP head assembly, domes, and water cover onto the cylinders using a 13mm socket and torque wrench. Torque to 20 foot-pounds in sequence, starting with bolt number 1 in illustration 1. Using a spark plug wrench or a 13/16 inch socket, reinstall the spark plugs and torque to 22 foot-pounds with a torque wrench. reconnect the main and throttle body coolant hoses and resecure the hose clamps with pliers. Next, reinstall the water temperature sensor with a 19mm socket and torque wrench. Be sure to torque to 18 foot-pounds. Reconnect this to the rest of the wiring harness, and replace the rubber cover and secure with the provided wire tie. Reinstall the DET sensor using a 13mm socket and torque wrench. Torque to 168 inch-pounds. Reconnect the spark plug caps, making sure that they are seated completely on the plug. Next, reinstall the pipe and silencer using the spring hook tool and the springs retained from earlier. Using a small amount of anti-seize compound on the threads of the probe nut, reinstall the exhaust temperature sensors into both the silencer and the pipe. Torque to 22 foot-pounds with a 17mm crow's foot and torque wrench. Reinstall the upper intake assembly with small screwdrivers, T40 torque socket, and ratchet. Replace the center air intake tube and install the supplied wire tie. Plug the ECU into the wiring harness. Next, begin to refill the engine coolant. There may be a little left over at this time. Next, start the engine. Bring the sled up to running temperature, then stop the engine, allowing the engine to cool completely. Check the coolant level and add more coolant as needed. Finally, retorque the head bolts following the instructions mentioned in Step 10 of your instruction sheet and shown in Illustration 1. Your installation is now complete. If you have any other questions, feel free to call us at 208-529-0244.